So good morning in Switzerland and good evening in Japan. Welcome to the 11th EPFL CIS Weekend AIP Joint Seminar. So my name is Masashi Sugiyama. I'm chairing the session today. So today's speaker is Professor René Ichiza from EPFL. So let me briefly introduce him. So he is currently a tenure-track assistant professor at EPFL in the Institute of Mathematics, and where he is a chair of Dynamics and Learning Algorithms Lab. Before joining EPFL in 2021, he obtained PhD in Applied Mathematics at University of Paris Dauphine and École Normale Supérieure. And then after that, he was a postdoc at INRIA Paris, and also he was a CNRS researcher at the University of Paris-Saclay. So his talk is entitled Mean Field Langevin Dynamics, Exponential Convergence, Annealing and Applications. Okay, so welcome, René, and looking forward to your talk.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation. So my talk will be about a certain generalization of Langevin dynamics, which are called mean field Langevin dynamics, and which I will present right now. So my talk will be organized in 4 parts. So in order to introduce the mean field Langevin dynamics, I will start by talking about noisy gradient descent on wide two-layer neural networks. Because one way to introduce mean field Langevin dynamics is via this problem. So we will see this as a motivational problem. And then I will go in a slightly more abstract context and a more general context where I will present these mean field Langevin dynamics in general and prove their convergence, also study the simulating annealing. And in the last part of my talk, I will talk about another application of these dynamics, which is to compute Wasserstein barycenters. So we will only talk about neural networks in the first part of this talk, but let's start with this. This is a motivating example for this mean field Langevin dynamics. So consider a wide two-layer neural network. So I'm considering a standard architecture. So this consists of predictors, which are given as a sum of m simple functions. M is the width of the hidden layer in our neural network, and typically we should think of m as being large. And we have a sum of simple functions parameterized by wi, and x here is the input of the neural network. So what is this simple function phi? In a typical neural network, this is the composition of an affine transform of the input parameterized by the input weights a. Then there is some nonlinearity, sigma, and then we multiply by the output weight b. And so this gives this function phi. W are the parameters of each of these function phi, it's the couple ab. And so the parameters of the full neural network, this is this set of weights, wi, which lives in R to the d to the m. So this is our class of predictors. And typically, we can use these predictors to solve a supervised learning task in which we are given input and output examples, xi, yi, our training examples. And in that case, when we choose the parameters by minimizing a regularized empirical risk. So this is following objective function. This is the sum over all the samples xj, yj from the training set of the loss associated to our wide two-layer neural network on these samples, and plus some regularized risk. Here, this is simply the weight decay regularization, that is the L2 norm squared of all the parameters in the neural network with some weight factor lambda here. So this is the regularized empirical risk minimization, and the assumptions under which what I will say in what follows is true are the following. We need to assume that the loss is smooth and convex. So this is a very standard assumption satisfied by the logistic and the L2 loss. And we will only need to assume, that phi, this feature function, is smooth and bounded. So this is the most restrictive assumption, because here in this example, phi is not bounded, because when b grows, this function is unbounded. So we would need to include some cutoff function in order to fit in our assumptions. But modulo this boundedness assumption, what we want to understand is the behavior of noisy gradient descent when we want to train a wide two-layer neural network. So by noisy gradient descent, I mean these following dynamics. We initialize the weights by sampling from some distribution mu0, okay, which is a standard practice. We choose a step size eta, also known as the learning rates, and we choose a noise level because I'm talking about noisy gradient descent. And the training dynamics of noisy gradient descent is just following the gradient dynamics of the loss GM, which depends on all our parameters, and adding some Gaussian noise to the inputs with some noise of order square root of 2. And the results that I will present in this talk, they will interpret this noisy gradient descent dynamics in a certain limit as a so-called mean field Langevin dynamics. And we will prove a global convergence result with an exponential rate for this dynamics. Let me give in this context the kind of result that we will obtain in this talk. If you consider the limit when the width of the neural network goes to plus infinity and the step size goes to 0, so I will be mostly interested in continuous time dynamics for the sake of clarity and simplicity, then you can look at the dynamics of the empirical distribution of the parameters of the neural network. So you see we have all these weights Wi. I form an empirical distribution over Rd. This is the empirical distribution of the parameters. And we can show that this distribution in the limit, it will converge at an exponential rate to the global minimizer of a certain function, which is defined over the set of probability measures, which is the sum of G of mu. So what is this function G of mu? This is simply the analog of our regularized empirical risk. But now when we parameterize the neural network using the distribution of our parameters mu instead of simply the parameters Wi. Okay, so this is again the sum of the empirical risk plus the regularization, plus a sum, the factor tau, which is the noise level, times the entropy of the measure mu. Or depending on your convention, you can, this is the negative entropy or the entropy. This is H is defined as the integral of log mu d mu. Okay, and a small remark, what is this function, how you can interpret this function G of mu? Well, this is the one which is consistent when we compute GM, so the empirical risk of a neural network of with M with parameters W, and I form the empirical distribution of the parameters associated to W. This gives me a measure mu hat, an empirical distribution. Then G, this function here, is simply the one such that we have consistency, so GM corresponds to G. So what we do when we solve noisy gradient descent, this theorem tells us that we solve, we minimize G, so the empirical risk of the neural network, but we add some regularization, which is the entropy of the measure mu. So this was the illustration of the results that I will present in the specific case of wide neural networks, but we will see that these kind of ideas that they apply more generally to more general problems. So let me give a few words about the related works. So the fact that we have convergence for such dynamics to the global minimizers was known for the past 4 years, I would say. We have these works by May and co-authors and Hu and co-authors. And the results were non-quantitative in nature. So they were showing that these dynamics had a unique stationary point. And so they were showing the convergence using some compactness and non-quantitative arguments. And the quantitative exponential convergence result, which I will talk about, has been shown independently this year by Nitenda and co-author, Nitenda Wu and Suzuki, and by myself in independent work. But of course, they rely on ideas which have been around for a long time, which are ideas that allow to study the Langevin dynamics in general using log-Sobolev inequalities. So the techniques that I will present, they have been known since the 80s. All right, so that was the first part, somehow the presentation of the motivating example. And now I will be slightly more abstract and consider a general problem when we want to minimize a convex function of a measure. But before that, I want to give a few words about Langevin dynamics, because what I'm going to present are generalization of Langevin dynamics. So it's good to have a little idea of what is the Langevin dynamics, the standard case, before I go into this generalization. So Langevin dynamics is a method to sample from some Gibbs distribution exponential of minus V over tau, where V will be a smooth function over RD with suitable coercivity property. So we want to sample from this Gibbs distribution, exponential minus v over 2, where tau is the temperature parameter. And we do that by following a noisy gradient descent algorithm. This is a stochastic recursion when we sample our initialization according to some measure mu0, and then we follow the gradient of v plus some noise, here zk or some IID Gaussian random variable, and the noise is proportional to square root of tau, where tau is the temperature parameter. So as I mentioned in this talk, we will be mostly interested in the small step size limits, where the analysis is slightly simpler, but of course in practice what you implement is this discrete time dynamics. But I will mostly focus on this continuous time dynamics. So this is the so-called Langevin dynamics. This is a gradient flow of V, but with some noise, which is here given by the derivative of a Brownian motion. All right. And again, there will be another step in our analysis. Instead of looking directly at xt, this stochastic process, which solves this stochastic differential equation, what we will look at is mostly the density, the law of xt. So the object of interest is this mu-t, which is the law of xt. And it turns out that this mu-t solves some partial differential equation, which is written here at the bottom of the slide. So if you have never seen the kind of derivation that allows to switch from the SDE to the partial differential equation, I have written here very briefly the steps that allow to compute the PD satisfied by the law of xt. So my goal is not for you to understand immediately these computations. This is just to show that this is not a magic. If you have never seen how to switch from the SDE to the PDE, essentially you need just two steps. You need to implement the Ito lemma and some integration by parts, and then you see that the law of xt satisfies some drift diffusion partial differential equation. So what you should keep in mind from this slide is that the derivative in time of the density of xt is advected by the gradient of v. So this is this drift term in this partial differential equation. And there is also some diffusion part, which is proportional to tau, the temperature parameter, and given by the Laplacian of mu-t. So this will be the dynamics of interest. This kind of dynamics will be of interest in this talk, and we will study a generalization of those. But what can we say about this Langevin dynamics before? So let me recall some standard facts that are known about these dynamics. So first, this dynamics, mu-t, the evolution of the law of our noisy gradient flow dynamics, it can be seen as a gradient flow of a certain function over the space of probability measures, f tau of mu, which is the sum of the integral of v against d mu plus tau times the entropy of mu. And when I say gradient flow, this is the gradient flow for a specific geometry, the Wasserstein geometry. But here, this is a technical detail. What matters is that the dynamic can be seen as a gradient flow in the space of probability measures. And here we see that we have an objective which is similar to the one that we had for neural networks. Instead that here, this is a linear function of the measure mu, while in the context of neural network, this was a function g of mu, which was convex but nonlinear. And this will be the kind of generalization we will focus on. But for the basic standard Langevin dynamics, the main things that are known are the following facts. So first, we know that f tau, this functional, admits a unique minimizer, which is called mu star tau, and it is precisely the probability measure which is proportional to exponential minus v over tau. Okay, so that's the density that we wanted to sample in the previous slide. And we can show that if this probability density, which is called mu star tau, satisfies the so-called rho log Sobolev inequality, so this is an inequality which I will introduce later in this talk, then we can show that the Langevin dynamics converges. Here, this is shown in value, but we have also convergence in a certain notion of distance over the space of probability measures. It converges at an exponential rate, given by this log Sobolev constant rho tau, to the global minimizer. And here, since the entropy H is strictly convex, there will exist a unique minimizer. and we converge at an exponential rate towards this minimizer. So you see that for neural networks, we had a similar problem, except that instead of a linear function here, we had a convex function over the space of measures. So let me maybe show again what was this function G for neural network. G, it is convex in the measure mu, because here we have a linear functional of the measure mu composed with a convex loss. And so G of mu is convex. And our goal will be to generalize the results that we know about Langevin dynamics when we replace this integral of v d mu by a general convex function. And this will lead to a wider class of evolution dynamics with nonlinear drifts. Okay. So let me introduce this generalization. You can keep in mind the example of neural networks, but we will see in this talk that there are other examples that can be dealt with such dynamics. So we define G, a function which is defined over the space of probability measures, which is convex. So here, for those who know about interpolation convexity, displacement convexity, this is not the notion that I'm using here. Here, I'm just talking about the standard notion of convexity over the space of probability measures. So we assume that our function G is convex, which was the case for wide two-layer neural networks. And we want to minimize the sum of G plus tau times the entropy. Okay? And I will call f tau of mu this function. So there will be some assumptions over G for our numerical method to make sense and to enjoy some guarantees. So we will need to assume that G admits a first variation. So this is really the derivative of the function G over the space of probability measures, which means that if I perturb a measure mu by some epsilon sigma, where sigma is a small measure valued perturbation, then the value of G should be G of mu plus epsilon times the integral of a function against d sigma. And sigma is my measure valued perturbation. So this function, V of mu, this is a continuous function over RD, and I will call it the first variation. So this is a function that depends both at the current measure mu and the point x in space where we are. Okay? So this function V of mu will be everywhere in this talk, and it's very important. This is the derivative of G, in a sense, in the space of measure. And I call it V because this is known as the first variation, so V stands for variation. So what we need to assume over G is that this first variation exists and that it has a Lipschitz gradient in the following sense, that if I take the gradient of this function V of mu, so here by gradient, I really mean that I have a function over RD and I take its gradient, so the vector of partial derivatives. Then when I change mu by I replace mu by mu prime and I replace x by x prime, this gradient does not change too much. It is modified by I mod L times a certain notion of distance between mu and mu prime. Here, this is the L2 Wasserstein distance, the kind of distance that we use over probability measures, plus the Euclidean distance between x and x prime. So we need a certain notion of smoothness for our function G, which was, again, satisfied by our neural network. And also, we need to assume that f tau admits a minimizer. So when this minimizer exists, it is unique because H is strictly convex, and we call it mu star tau. Okay, so our goal is to find the dynamics that will converge to mu star tau. What will be these dynamics? Again, this is, I'm just reformulating what we had for two-layer neural networks, but in a more abstract, more general framework, more context. What we consider is a noisy gradient flow. So we take m particles with position xi of t, because these positions will evolve in time. I will sample the positions of these particles at time 0 according to some distribution mu0. So I did not write this here, but we sample xi in an IID fashion at time equals 0 according to some distribution mu0. I here goes from 1 to n. And all these particles, they will follow the gradient of this first variation V of G at time t, plus some noise, which is given by independent Brownian motions. And where do I evaluate this this first variation V? So I will evaluate it at mu hat of t, which is the empirical distribution of my m particles xi of t. Okay, so I have a cloud of m particles. At initialization, they are sampled in an IID fashion according to mu0. And then at each time t, they will follow the gradient of this first variation of mu, the first variation of g, evaluated at mu hat, this empirical distribution. And to this, we add some noise, which is given by an independent Brownian motion. So to do the theoretical analysis, it will be convenient to consider the limit when we have a large number of particles. So the xi will grow to plus infinity, the number of particles. We take m to plus infinity. And this is the so-called mean field limit, which has been studied a lot since the 60s. We have many results about such convergence. But in essence, what we know is that in this limit, the path followed by all these particles will converge in distribution to IID draws from a certain stochastic differential equation, which is nonlinear. So this is very similar to the Langevin dynamics, where we have a particle with position xt that follows minus the gradient of a function plus some noise. But now this function, v of mu t, depends on time. So this is like a Langevin dynamic, but with a time-dependent potential. And it depends on the current law of xt. Okay, so mu t is the law of my particles. And we evaluate the potential at this value of mu t. And we follow the first variation, this potential v, at all time with our particles. Again, we can do a slight change of point of view and focus on the dynamics satisfied by mu t, this distribution of particles. And this is what is known as the mean field Langevin dynamics. So this is, again, a drift diffusion equation where we have a drift given by a velocity field which is minus the gradient of v at mu t plus a diffusion term proportional to tau again. So the only difference with the Langevin dynamics is that now the potential depends in time, and more particularly, it depends on the current distribution of particles. So this is why I said that this is a nonlinear generalization of the Langevin dynamics. So again, we can interpret mu t as a gradient flow under a certain geometry of our objective function f tau. And in this talk, what I will present is a new result about the convergence of these dynamics. Okay, so but to present the convergence of the dynamics, I need to make one more assumption about the structure of the problem, which is a uniform log-Sobolev inequality. So that's the occasion to introduce this kind of inequalities, log-Sobolev inequalities. So we define the relative entropy using this formula, log of d mu over d nu against d mu. This is also known as the Kullback-Leibler divergence between nu and nu. And here we'll call it a relative entropy. And we also define the relative Fisher information, I of mu nu, by this complicated formula. But this is a quantity that will appear naturally when we want to study the dynamics. Okay. When we say that we assume a log-Sobolev inequality, we assume the following. We assume that there exists a constant, rho tau. So this constant can depend on the temperature parameter, but otherwise it is determined by our problem, such that for any probability measure, when I look at the Gibbs distribution associated to the first variation of my function g, so this is called v, I have a Gibbs distribution here, exponential of minus v of mu over tau. We want this probability measure to satisfy a log-Sobolev inequality, which means that for any measure mu tilde, I have an upper bound of the relative entropy in terms of the relative Fisher information. So this is a property for this measure nu, okay, that we assume. We want that this measure nu satisfies this inequality for any mu tilde. And we will want this to be satisfied for any nu that is encountered through our dynamics, so all the measures nu that are given by exponential of minus v of mu over tau for probability measure nu. So this is a bit of an abstract assumption, but it turns out that it is it is possible to verify it in the context of applications that I'm considering in this talk. So let me give you some simple criterion that show when this assumption is satisfied. So for instance, if we are on a compact domain and V of mu is uniformly bounded in L infinity norm, then we can show that such a roto exists. And it's also possible to show that it exists if we are on RD, so which was the context which I'm presenting here. So in that case, we need to assume that V of mu is not so different from some strongly convex function f. So we need that the L infinity norm between V of mu and a strongly convex function is bounded. With some uniformity, this assumption will give us the existence of a log Sobolev inequality. So for instance, for neural networks, the setting that I introduced with which I started this talk, this assumption is satisfied for some constant roto, which is lambda. So lambda is the weight decay regularization times exponential of -2 over the supremum norm of our feature function. So that's why I need to assume that our feature function is bounded because it appears in this constant row divided by tau. Okay. So now that we've introduced all the hypotheses, I can present the main convergence results, which was obtained independently by Nitanda et al. And by myself. Under all these previous assumptions, we have exponential convergence of the mean field Langevin dynamics, which means that if I look at the suboptimality gap at time t, it decreases at an exponential rate, with the rate will depend on roto, this constant of the log Sobolev inequalities. And here I presented the result for convergence in value, but we have the same rate of convergence if we look at distances over the space of probability measures, for instance, relative entropy or Wasserstein distance. And in particular, you should notice that we recover exactly the result that is known for Langevin dynamics in the linear case where the function g of mu is given by the integral of a fixed function against d mu. So in that case, the first variation of g is exactly v and does not depend on mu. And all the analysis and all the results I've presented are obtained as a particular case for the Langevin dynamics. So maybe I will give a few words about the proof of this result, because as you will see, it is a generalization of the proof that we have for the standard case of the Langevin dynamics. So let me first give a one-line proof of the exponential convergence for the Langevin dynamics. So in that case, again, we consider a function f of mu, which is the sum of a linear function of mu, v d mu, plus an entropy term, h of mu. It turns out that the sum of integral of v d mu plus the entropy, and here I assume that the temperature tau equals to 1 for simplicity, it can be shown that this is equal to the relative entropy between mu and nu, where nu is exponential of -v. Okay. And in that case, what we can show is the following. You look at this objective function, the suboptimality gap, you take its derivative in time along the Langevin dynamics, and you find that this is precisely the Fisher information of mu t relative to nu. And nu here, this Gibbs distribution. Okay. So here, this is by direct computation, you show that you get the Fisher information, where the energy dissipation is the Fisher information. And that's why this object is important when we want to study this kind of dynamics. Then you use the log Sobolev inequality assumption, which directly tells you that you have this inequality, and you get the relative entropy between nu t and nu. And as I said, this is precisely the suboptimality gap, because in fact, in this context, f star, the global minimum is 0. So we directly have an energy dissipation in terms of the energy. This is in optimization sometimes known as Polyaklo-Zagievich inequality that we have here. And using Grunwald's lemma, you have exponential convergence of the suboptimality gap. So that will be this proof scheme that we will generalize to our more general context, where now we have g of mu, which is general. So again, I fix tau equals to 1. The temperature will be fixed equal to 1 for simplicity. And instead of defining mu as the global minimizer of our dynamics, the Gibbs distribution, the good notion of generalization that we need is to define mu t to be the Gibbs distribution associated to the first variation of G, so this function V of mu t. And what do we get in this more general setting? So now G is a general convex function. When we differentiate in time the objective function, again, we get a Fisher information, but this is a Fisher information of mu t with respect to nu t. So that's why I have defined this strange object, the exponential of minus V of mu t, because that's what we obtain when we differentiate in time the suboptimality gap along our dynamics. Next, we can use our log-Sobolev inequality to have this new bound. And the issue here is that we do not exactly recover the suboptimality gap in this case, because this was only true in the linear case that the objective function is equal to a relative entropy. But in the general case, using the convexity of G, we can show that the suboptimality gap is in fact upper bounded by this relative entropy. And so we can conclude the chain of inequality. We again have a Polyakh-Lozachevich inequality for our dynamics. And using Grunwald lemma, we can conclude and obtain the exponential convergence. That was really the key idea behind the proof. And now I will talk about the simulated annealing dynamics. So in the previous result, we saw that what we were minimizing was the sum of a convex function, G of mu, plus tau times the entropy of mu. But sometimes this additional entropy term is not desirable, and we would like to have a vanishing temperature, a vanishing level of noise, so that in the limit, our dynamics will exactly minimize G without this additional entropic regularization. And for this, we will consider the simulated annealing dynamics, where we will decrease the temperature continuously in a smooth way during our dynamics, so with some temperature schedule tau of t. So this is the same dynamics as previously, except that I have a temperature which depends on time. And we can do a similar kind of analysis for this specific dynamics. But instead of having a Wasserstein gradient flow, we have a slightly more complicated dynamics. And in this case, we have the following kind of results. So if I assume that the log-Sobolev inequality, ρ, they admit the following lower bound as a function of the temperature tau. So this form of the lower bound is motivated by the fact that in all the examples, for instance, in the example of neural networks, this is the kind of lower bound that we have. So we assume that the log-Sobolev constant decreases as exponential of minus alpha star over tau. And we choose a temperature schedule which decreases very slowly in time at the speed which is of order 1 over log of t. So this is a very slow temperature decay. And in that case, with this temperature decay, we can prove that the suboptimality gap at time t will decrease polynomially, which means that my dynamics mu t, which follows this dynamics, it is close to the optimal measure for the specific temperature, for the current value of the temperature tau t, and it converges polynomially in time towards this optimal measure mu star tau t. But now, if you are interested in minimizing the unregularized problem, which means directly minimizing G, which in the context of neural networks was our regularized empirical risk, then we can prove that this dynamics, it converges at a rate which is very slow, log t over log t, to the global minimizer of the unregularized functional. So we see that we have two different time scales in our dynamics, which are represented in this cartoon. Here I've plotted in red the regularization path. So this is the set of solutions of the regularized problem with varying level of temperature. And our training dynamics with noisy gradient descent, so this mean field Langevin dynamics, it follows this blue path it will converge at a polynomial rate towards the regularization path. And then both of these paths will converge very slowly at a 1 over log t rate towards the solution of the unregularized problem, which in the context of neural network, again, is the solution of the regularized empirical risk problem. All right, so that's what I wanted to say about the simulated annealing dynamics. I had some words about the proof, but I think I will skip it to directly jump to a more concrete example where instead of applying these kind of ideas to the training of wide two-layer neural networks, we will consider applying this idea of mean-field Langevin dynamics to the computation of Wasserstein barycenters. So I will explain what I mean by the computation of Wasserstein barycenters. To define them, I need to define the Wasserstein loss between two probability measures mu and nu. This is a notion of distance, of discrepancy between two probability measures, which is defined as follows. You define pi of mu nu, the set of transport plans between mu and nu. So this will be the set of joint laws between mu and nu. Sorry, the laws of coupling between mu and nu. So I see that someone is raising the hand, but I do not know how to give the mic to people who raise their hands. So sorry, but I will answer all the questions anyways in the end of this talk if I cannot hear the questions before that. So we consider pi of mu nu the set of transport plans, and the Wasserstein loss, which in this talk will be denoted by T0. It will be given by the minimum of this optimization problem. We search over all the potential transport plans between mu and nu for the one that minimizes the so-called transport cost, which is the integral against d gamma of y minus x to the squared, so the squared distance cost. You can interpret this quantity T0 as the effort that is needed to move the mass of the first probability distribution mu towards the distribution nu, where the effort of displacing a unit of mass from the point x to the point y is given by half the square distance. So this gives us a notion of discrepancy between measures, which is faithful to the geometry of the space where we live in, and in particular, the Wasserstein distance, which I've used throughout this talk without saying what it was. It is in fact defined as the square root of 2 times this quantity T0. But here, I will only use this quantity T0, which is a notion of discrepancy. And since we have this notion of distance between measures, we can wonder what is the barycenter between a family of probability measures over RD for this notion of distance. So this is the notion of Wasserstein barycenters. If you take K probability measures with compact support, mu1, etc., to nu K, and K weights, non-negative weights, W1, etc., to WK, we define the Wasserstein barycenter as the minimizer of this objective functional, which is the sum of the distances of the Wasserstein losses between mu, so the unknown, and this family of, each of the probability measures from this family, mu K. So we want to find somehow a consensus, the probability measures, which is not too far away from all the measures in our family. So here I have a small illustration for probability measures which are on R squared, on the Unix square, sorry. So here, for instance, this is one probability measure, nu1, which is the indicator of a ring. Here I have nu2, which is the indicator of a heart. So I have nu1 here, nu2 here, nu3 here, and nu4 here. So I have 4 probability measures, of which I will take the barycenters with various weights, which are represented inside this square here. So here I represent the various barycenters that we can obtain by, between these shapes, which represent, these probability measures, which represent shapes in the corners of these squares. So we see that this is a nice way to interpolate between probability measures. Again, so I recall that here, for instance, when we see this heart, this is the probability measure which is uniform over the set given by the heart. So we have this notion of barycenters, which is useful to compare between probability distributions. So yes, so I see many people raising their hands, but in fact, I've been told that you should use the Q&A. So I will read the questions in the Q&A. Okay, and I see a question which was about the previous section of this talk. So I will answer this question by Fabio Nobile at the end of my talk, and I will not forget to come back to it. So this problem of Wasserstein barycenters has been well studied in the past 10 years. Here I show an application to computer graphics when we want to compare images, but in fact, this is useful in machine learning when, for instance, we want to summarize the information which is contained in a family of probability distributions. For instance, this has been used to merge parallel posterior computations. So in Bayesian sampling, sometimes you want to parallelize your computation of posteriors, and then you can use your samplings of posteriors. You can use the Wasserstein barycenters to merge several samplings of your posterior that you have parallelized. And in the machine learning applications, typically, we are not in dimension 2, we are in higher dimension. And the difficult part in higher dimension is that the support of the Wasserstein barycenter is not known. I cannot say, okay, I will grid my space and find the barycenter over my fixed grid. We need to have numerical methods which are grid-free. And so that's why I will present, and for this kind of problem, the mean field Langevin dynamics, we will see that they are quite natural and useful. Okay, so let me explain very briefly what kind of issues we can have when we want to use grid-free methods to compute Wasserstein barycenters. So here I want to compute the barycenter between probability distribution, which are made of just two direct masses over the unique square. I have new one, which is the probability measure in blue, made of two direct masses, and new two, the probability measure, which is given by these oranges, two direct masses. Their true Wasserstein barycenter is given by the probability measures mu star, which is these two black points. And it turns out that this probability measure with these two stars here is a strict local minimum of the Wasserstein barycenter objective, which means that if I start from here, these probability measures with two direct masses located here as the red star, and I do a gradient method, then I will not move at all because this is a strict local minimum. But this is not the global minimizer of the Wasserstein barycenter objective. So here, this is just a small example to show that when we want to learn the support of the barycenter, this is a non-convex problem with some difficulties. In fact, this is known that in some contexts, this problem is NP-hard. But here we will be interested by approximations by solving the approximated Wasserstein barycenter. So now let me show you that mean field Langevin dynamics can give a simple grid-free and globally convergent algorithm to compute these Wasserstein barycenters. And for this, there is one more step before seeing the results of this algorithm. I need to regularize the Wasserstein barycenter objective because the smoothness assumptions that I was making at the beginning of this talk are not satisfied if I directly take G as the Wasserstein barycenter objective. So for this, I will add to the optimal transport problem a quantity which is known as the entropic regularization. I add a regularization parameter lambda times the relative entropy between my transport plan and the predict measure mu times mu. So this specific regularization has been well studied, and in fact, I've chosen it because it allows to have all the smoothness properties that we want for our dynamics to be well defined. So we define the regularized Wasserstein barycenter objective G lambda as follows, which is the same as for the Wasserstein barycenter, but with T0 is replaced by T lambda, this approximation of the Wasserstein loss. And then we will run a noisy gradient descent over particles for G lambda. So this is our mean field Langevin dynamics. And you will see that I will choose a very specific noise level, tau, which is related to the regularization that I've put here. So I could choose a different value for tau and still obtain exponential convergence, but there is a nice phenomenon of debiasing that occurs when I have this specific choice. and I will show you some numerical illustration in the end of this talk. So if I take this function as my convex function over the space of measures, and I run my mean field Langevin dynamics, then we have this partial differential equation, and we expect it to converge to global minimizers of the regularized barycenter problem, to which I have added lambda over 2, because lambda over 2 is my noise level here, times the entropy of mu. So before giving you the results that we can obtain in this context, let me mention that here, G lambda itself is defined as the minimization problem. So to compute the gradient of G lambda, to compute its first variation V lambda, we need to solve some optimal transport problem. And so the time complexity per iteration will be of order m times n, where m is the number of particles of my barycenter, and n is the number of particles in the various measures of which I want to compute the barycenters. So you have more or less a quadratic complexity per iteration. All right, so let me present the results of this dynamics, and then I will show some numerical illustration for that. First, we have the exponential convergence results that I've presented previously. So if I take k compactly supported measures, nu1, etc., to nu k, then we can show that the dynamics is well defined. We have all the regularity assumptions which are sufficient to guarantee uniqueness and well-posedness of the mean field Langevin dynamics. And we have exponential convergence with some convergence rate, like the rate of exponential convergence will be exponentially small in the regularization parameter lambda. So as I regularize less, my dynamics will behave badly. So we converge at an exponential rate to the minimizer of the regularized barycenter objective function. And so we can wonder now whether this regularized barycenter is far away or not from the true unregularized barycenter. And here I'm skipping the assumptions that we can make on ui to prove the following results because they are quite technical. But let's say that in a favorable setting, if the nui's are smooth enough, the measures of which I'm computing the barycenter, we can show that the barycenter of the regularized problem is only at a distance lambda to the squared from the true barycenter, the unregularized one. And here, lambda squared is a good rate because if I had minimized G lambda without adding this entropy term, the error would be of order lambda. So here I just mentioned this fact to emphasize on the fact that sometimes this additional entropic regularization is undesirable. So that was the case for neural network, because this is not something which is useful, for instance, for generalization properties. But in this specific problem of computing Wasserstein barycenters with entropic regularization, this additional entropic term that comes from the noise in the dynamics is in fact beneficial because it allows to debias the solution. So now we will conclude my talk with some numerical experiments that shows you this mean field Langevin dynamics in practice, how they look like. So here, this is the same example as previously in dimension 2, where I compute the barycenter between the measure in the measure in blue, which is made of 2 direct masses, and the measure in orange. And I start precisely my dynamics on the strict local minimum. Okay, so if I would have started a simple gradient descent on my objective, nothing would have happened. My dynamics would have stayed stuck at this point. But now with the mean field Langevin dynamics, we have the following evolution. We see that thanks to the noise, we escape this strict local minimum and we converge to the true regularized barycenter, which is very close to the true Wasserstein barycenter. If you remember, this was a measure with 2 direct masses here and there. So of course, we see a small diffusion effect, but it is much better than what we have started from, which would be the kind of local minima in which gradient descent dynamics without noise would get stuck. So this was to illustrate the global convergence effect of mean field Langevin dynamics. And now I will illustrate with this last numerical experiment the debiasing effect of the noise. So here, let me explain a bit the context. We have some probability distributions over the Unix square. The first probability, I will take the barycenter of the probability distribution in blue, the one in green, and the one in orange. So these are simple Gaussian mixtures that I've sampled. And in black, this will be the evolution of my training dynamics, of my optimization dynamics. And I've represented below here the true solution, the true barycenters between the measure in blue, in green, and in orange is given by this measure in black, which is made of two clusters. And this is the true Wasserstein barycenters that I want to compute. So what if I just compute the gradient descent over the regularized barycenter objective? So there is no noise. Okay, this is not the dynamics I've studied, but this is the mean field Langevin dynamics of which I've just taken the noise away. So we see that we converge to a measure which is very different from the true barycenter. This is the bias that is induced by the entropic regularization. And as I've shown previously, if we choose the right level of noise in the mean field Langevin dynamics, so first we converge globally to the barycenter, and we are much closer to the true solution than what we had with the not noisy dynamics. So here, this was to stress on the fact that noise is both helpful in this context for global convergence, but also to debias the solution of the problem. So I have reached the end of my talk. Let me conclude. So the key takeaway that I wanted to give through this talk is that some key properties of Langevin dynamics can be extended to this more general class of dynamics, which are called mean field Langevin dynamics, where we have replaced this linear potential by a general smooth enough convex functional over the space of probability measures. And we have seen two applications, an application to the understanding of noisy gradient descent on wide two-layer neural networks, and an application to compute Wasserstein barycenters. And I think there are many links between Langevin dynamics and mean field Langevin dynamics that can be made, many more links, and also more applications that we could consider for such dynamics. So I encourage you to look at this problem and to think whether at this kind of dynamics and to think whether they can be useful in your context. The references on which this talk are based, so there are my references here, and also an upcoming paper for the application to a computation of Wasserstein barycenters. And I stress again that the exponential convergence results and some other results, for instance, about time discretization, were independently discovered by Nitin Davu and Suzuki in this paper. So thank you for your attention. And now I will come back to the questions that I've had previously.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the great talk. So, okay, Fabio asked the question already, so maybe you could start answering his question first.
So the question of Fabio is, your result shows exponential convergence of the regularized loss to its minimum. Can you say something on the convergence rates of the measure to a minimizer? So yes. So let me go back to this result. Okay. So here I stated the result in function value. So this is the exponential convergence in functional value, but we have the same rate of convergence for the squared Wasserstein distance or relative entropy. So you have also convergence, exponential convergence of the dynamics towards the global minimizer. And the argument to prove that you have convergence, for instance, in Wasserstein distance is via the Talagrand inequality, which is a consequence of log-Sobolev inequality. And so we have convergence both in functional value and also of the minimizers. Yeah.
Okay, so then any other questions? Actually, Suzuki is joining the seminar, so he may also, Nitanda is also here. Okay, he's asking.
Taiji raised his hand actually, so I was expecting also. Okay.
So we'll read the question of Nitanda. So yes, we have exchanged emails. It's quite very surprising, like the proof techniques for this theorem that I've shown, and the proof technique, which is on the next slide, is exactly the same in our both papers. So somehow this is a sign that this is a natural approach and a natural strategy to generalize mean field Langevin dynamics. So the question that Atsushi Nishitanda gives is uniform LSE guaranteed by Holly and Strouk argument, even in the setting of Wasserstein barycenters? So yes, here I did not give the details, but it is true. It's not immediate that we can prove the uniform LSE for Wasserstein barycenters, the application that I've presented in the end. But in fact, there are recent results about log-Sobolev inequalities for a mixture of Gaussians. So let me go back to this setting. Yes. So what we want is that the Gibbs distribution associated to the first variation of this functional satisfies the LSE, log-Sobolev inequality. And in fact, this is true because there are some recent results about log-Sobolev inequalities for mixture of Gaussian densities. So this is a quite fine result that is needed to have this assumption, but in fact, it can be shown, yes. So all the convergence results that I've presented here is rigorously proved in the upcoming paper. Yeah.
So let me also ask a non-technical question. I think the discussion today is focusing on the two-layer networks, but in reality, we prefer to use much deeper layer networks. So do you think the current result is somehow extended to deeper networks, or is the behavior completely different?
Yeah, so here, okay, let me go back to the first case of, no, the kind of result and all this analysis is really specific to the case of one hidden layer. When we have deeper neural networks and we make the width of the layer go to plus infinity, the kind of models that we get are very different than a convex function over the space of measures. So I would say that the short answer is that everything that we say in the two-layer case is very specific to this two-layer case, and I do not expect a similar result to hold for deeper neural networks.
What is the cause for the big difference between two layers and more layers?
So the cause of this difference is that for two-layer neural network, we can write them with this very simple form where we have a sum of simple functions with some parameters wi, and you see that there is no weight sharing, more or less. Like here we have a sum of functions with independent parameters. And so I can write this, I can see this sum as an integral of phi against an empirical distribution over the space of parameters. And this point of view completely breaks when we have more layers. So the analysis of deeper neural networks is also a topic which I really like and I'm interested in. But the kind of results that we are obtaining in this the deeper layer case, like when we have more layers, are typically much weaker. So to obtain an exponential convergence guarantee is maybe a bit too high as a hope for deeper neural network. But yes, the main argument why it breaks is that for two-layer neural network, we have this specific expression as an empirical average of simple functions, which is not present for deeper neural networks. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Actually, Taiji is here. So would you like to say something?
Yeah, so I have just a simple question. So I missed how to calculate the gradient for the Wasserstein barycenter problem. So is it easy to calculate, or do we need to calculate some barycenter? Do we need to solve some barycenter problem at each iteration?
At each iteration, we need to solve a regularized barycenter problem, which you can do with, for instance, sinc-orn iterations. I mean, there are various algorithms that can do this. And the complexity is typically quadratic in the number of particles.
I see.
But of course, in practice, you will only have inexact gradients. So I do not study this aspect, the fact that instead of V lambda, we have an approximation of V lambda, because that's what we have in practice. But yes, at each iteration, you need to solve this barycenter problem. But since at each iteration, you have only changed your parameters by a little bit, you observe that you only need to do a few sinc-orn iterations, like 5 or 10 sinc-orn iterations per iteration to compute your gradients, and it works well. But all this is heuristics. I do not study this discretization, like this approximate gradient aspects. Yeah.
I see. So anyway, so we have some particular approximation, so we can calculate this. We can run the sinc-Holmes algorithm. So
exactly. So here, like this type of simulations, they take, for instance, this one, it's like 10 seconds to give you an idea, maybe less, I think 5 seconds. Yeah, and you can run them in higher dimension without additional costs because the cost is the number of particles. Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Any other questions? If there's no further question, it's just exactly 1 hour now, so it's time to finish the seminar today. So thanks, Leniak, for giving a talk today. So please join me to thank him for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Next week, we still have one more seminar in this month. So by Koichi Hashida from Weekend AIP. I think he will be talking about personal data sharing. So the topic is quite different from this week's theoretical discussion. But hopefully many people can join the seminar again next week. Okay, thank you very much. So have a good day in Switzerland and have a good night in Japan. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.